Kia ora koutou, ko Meagan taku ingoa, he mata rangahau awhinuku I te Esdale Centre. So this presentation is designed to provide you a little bit more information about the 2021 grant round and to support you as you write your application form. So the Esdale Centre is very fortunate to have annual funding from the Hearing Research Foundation that has been provided to distributing grants each year. So this year our funding priorities are to encourage research that partners with Māori communities and with research and to encourage research that partners with Pacific communities. So a major strategic objective of the centre is to build capability and capacity in this area and to support research that is for, by and with our Māori and Pacific communities. So we also want to maintain a platform of research capability for hearing imbalance in Aotearoa. What do we mean by capability? Well, we really want to make sure that we don't lose researchers in this area. And many of our early career researchers are on soft money, and so we want to make sure that if they run out of funding and need something to tide them over, that this is available for them, as long as they have a clear pathway to how this funding will help them gain that next grant to provide some more security for their salaries. We've also want to provide seed funding for new research, collaborations, feasibility studies with a clear pathway to how this grant can be used to leverage further funding. So as you go for those bigger grant applications, you might need some pilot data, or you may want to build some skills within your research team, and so this grant provides the options to do that. And then we want to encourage multidisciplinary, multi-centre research as well as clinician and community research. So, our clinicians and our community members see issues in the things that they're doing, and so these grants provide them with opportunities to do some research around those things. So those funding priorities align nicely with the different types of grants that we're giving out. I'll just say a couple of things on this slide. Firstly, for the Māori and Pacific research projects, we have one grant outlined for each of those. That is not to say we will not award more than one grant. We just want to make sure that funding is secured for those specific research projects. And then in terms of our PhD and our clinician grants, we have approximately 5,000, so we are a little bit negotiable around this number, and if your research is going to cost a little bit more than that, then there's just put the number in and we can have a look at it. So what have we funded for our first 4 years? So this is just a very basic look at metrics in terms of who we've funded and what kind of research we've funded. But you'll see that we have provided that support for capability in providing 13 postdoc salaries and funding for 3 PhD projects. We have that clinician element there. We're 4 clinician-led projects. Over the last couple of years, we've awarded funding for our first 3 kaupapa Māori research projects, which has been really exciting. And then we have that collaboration, so cross-institution, multidisciplinary research projects. So in terms of writing your application, so I haven't included any of the detail around that first page where you provide your media summary. That's all fairly and provide maybe just a little bit more context, particularly for perhaps some clinicians or community members that may not have a lot of experience writing grants. So first of all, you need to provide the rationale for this research project. So that is the why. So why does this research need to be done? Where is the gap? So you need to look through literature. What have people done before? What have they found? What still needs to be done? And what are you going to do? So that brings us to our to the specific aims of the project. What exactly are you going to do? So usually your research aims sections will only just be a few sort of bullet point statements about what you're planning to do. And then underneath that comes your design and methods. So how are you going to do this research? What protocols are you going to follow? What techniques are you going to use? What sort of feasibility and validity of your data collection. You may provide power calculations if you're looking to support your sample sizes. Here it says state how other funding or access to funding might be used. So this aligns with if you've on your first page outlined that you've applied elsewhere for funding for this project. In some cases, we might negotiate with those other funding agencies a co-funding arrangement, and we have done that with AMRF and with the Neurological Foundation in the past. So you can either outline that here very clearly, or otherwise we can also go and contact those people after the fact and negotiate what a co-funding arrangement looks like. So I've sort of mixed up the order a little bit here, but I've put research impact and next steps and leverage together just because they sort of are around timelines and thinking about the timelines of your research, what your research is going to do and what it's going to lead to. So I'll talk a little bit more about research impact in the next few slides, but in terms of next steps and leverage, if you're applying for capability funding to tide over a postdoc in your lab, or if you're looking for some seed funding, we want to know that you have a bigger picture in mind, and what we are going to fund is going to lead on to the next grant application. So and we want you to be quite specific here. So this is the data I hope to get, and I'll be applying for XYZ over this certain time frame. In terms of research impact, we want our researchers to be thinking about the impact that their research will have, and to be mapping a pathway toward that impact. So this is becoming a really important part of research assessment. So you'll see there's a definition there from MB and HRC. So they both have, they assess impact of research. And I like their definitions because, they talk about beyond contribution to knowledge and skills in research organizations, or benefits for non-academic end users. So a lot of researchers and academics, impact is almost secondary to the number of journal articles you publish, your citation index, how many invited presentations you give. I mean, those are all the things you're assessed against when you're going for promotion. But what is the actual impact of your research? And you have to put in an extra effort to push your research toward impact. So here, when considering research impact, is not created by researchers alone, but rather requires communication, relationships, actions that connect your research to people from organisations beyond academia. So this HRC pathway to impact model is a very nice way to sort of look at it. So you have applied for funding for a discrete piece of research, and there are inputs. So there's your inputs. So you've got your funding, you've got your people, your skills, your research platforms and equipment, the previous knowledge that sort of informed this research. That's all of your input. Maybe you've had some co-design with some of your end users. So that's all of your inputs. You then do the research and you have your research outputs, but then how are you going to see that moved toward outcomes and impacts? So this is where, how do you ensure there is uptake and use of your research? We do appreciate that a lot of research is, there's risk, and it often doesn't go to plan. But if you have that pathway mapped out, if when things do go to plan, you sort of have those next steps sort of outlined. And you can also have feedback and input from those end users as your research moves through the different series of steps. So in our research impact section, we want you to outline an impact pathway. So first of all, you're considering, okay, what is the ultimate impact of my research? How is this ultimately going to contribute to improved health or other societal benefits? And when you're sitting down to do your research, you already have that in your mind. So for example, even with your basic science, you looking at the expression of a protein, well, that might be to find a drug target or to provide a gene target for gene therapy, to prevent or cure hearing loss or treat hearing loss. So those are the impacts that you want your research to have. So that's the sort of end goal, and then what are the steps that you can take as a researcher to push your research toward that impact? So in this section, you can consider the short-term outputs and outcomes, and that's the more academic aligned outputs and outcomes, which include developing capacity in your research groups, training postgraduate students, bringing new skills to the group, developing collaborations, disseminating your research findings, and contributing to knowledge in your field. After that, you can then consider, what are the longer term activities that I can do to create impact? So consider how you could communicate your research to communities, clinicians, industry, government agencies, and also how you might start forming relationships with individuals that could lead toward implementation of your research findings. So I, as a previous researcher, really understand that doing all of that stuff takes a lot of time, and so the EMC wants to help facilitate your pathway to impact. And a major part of our strategic plan for next year and onwards is looking at how we can help facilitate pathways to impact. So we want to provide support for that and help you develop those relationships. So then the last couple of sections in the grant is aligning your research with goals of the EMC and responsiveness to Māori. So on the the website, we have our strategic goals here to download. So you just need to look at those and align your research to those goals. And then we have Alejandra Manuel, our Māori Research Coordinator, has developed an extensive and excellent resource, sort of, brought many different resources together to support you as you consider the responsiveness to Māori section. And she will also be providing some extra support to that. So this section is very important. We want to make sure that our research is delivering equitable outcomes for our Māori communities in New Zealand. And again, this is also to provide you the opportunity to kind of learn for developing those bigger grant applications. So this section will be graded in this round, and so you can you'll be given that grade so you can understand how well you're doing in this section, how well you're addressing that responsiveness to Māori section. This year the grade won't contribute to the overall score, but from next year we're planning that this will. So that's completing your application. So just to highlight that, I'm very happy to provide support as you complete your application with whatever questions you have, and Alejandra will support the responsiveness to Māori section, and she's going to do this by running a couple of Zoom sessions, and you can see the details on the web page for where all of the grant information is. So thank you for that, and we look forward to receiving your application forms at the end of September. Thanks very much.